Thank you, Aveen. After an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. I'm here to talk to you today about the history of Australia. In 1770, Captain Cook discovered Australia. Thank you. I hope you can come to my next lecture. I was educated in Australia, and that's more or less what we got. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Captain Cook, Australia as we know it. But there's so much more to the story. And we have the kangaroo and the emu. Now, why do we have the kangaroo and the emu? There are many animals in Australia we could have used. For one, they're about the same height. 6'6", 7 foot tall. If we'd had an emu and a koala, it might have looked a bit odd. But the main reason is these two creatures can't take a step backwards. Every step they take is a step forward. And that is a very good symbolic thing to have on your coat of arms. Melbourne says, no way that we're going to have Sydney as capital. Sydney says, no way we're going to have Melbourne as capital. So they went right in the middle of nowhere, just trees, cut the trees down and built a city halfway. And on the map it looks like it's in New South Wales, but there's an area of land that's cut out. It's called the Australian Capital Territory, that is run by the federal government. And it runs that, the Northern Territory, plus the country as a whole. Our national government stays in Canberra. And Canberra is the Aboriginal word for meeting place. Here's a question to think about. Area-wise, how many times would the mainland United States fit into the Pacific Ocean? 17. It is huge. What was happening around the world in the 13th century? The Magna Carta was being written in England. Robert the Bruce was running around Scotland. Marco Polo was exploring Asia. What do you think the people in New Zealand were doing at that time? Nothing. There were no people in New Zealand at the beginning of the 13th century. Not only were there no people, there were no mammals. Apart from two, there were two forms of bat. They're called the long-tailed bat and the short-tailed bat. And the way to tell them apart is one has a long tail. You're ahead of me, aren't you? I'm going to deviate a bit and go back to 1707. There was a man who was in charge of the British Navy, and his name was Sir Cloudesley Shovel, believe it or not. And he had just taken a British fleet to Spain for a battle. They'd won the battle. They were on their way home. The weather was terrible. It was England. The weather was terrible, and he said to whoever's steering the ship, take a 90-degree starboard turn. And one of his underlings, an officer but still lowly, said to him, I come from this area. I think we're turning too soon. He was hanged for insubordination. And Cloudesley, I imagine, said, anyone else got a problem? Next thing, the fleet hits the Scilly Isles. The fleet is almost all destroyed, 2,000 people killed. Before we go into the next section, are there any flat earthers here? Nobody believes the earth is flat? That's good, because this next few minutes could be a bit traumatic for them, because we're going to talk about Magellan sailing around the globe. I'll just tell you a quick story about my history professor. I bumped into him a year ago, and I told him what I was doing now. I was doing this. He said, He said, I bet if you had a time machine, you would have paid more attention in my history lessons. I said, if I had a time machine, I wouldn't need your history lessons. You will have seen some wonderful sights. You would have seen some amazing creatures. But I want to tell you about one creature that I've discovered. This creature is very intelligent, very inquisitive, and very, very friendly. And it's called the Viking guest. And you can see them wandering around the countryside in groups of 20 or 30. And you can tell who the leader is because they have a red disc above their head. And at nights, they gather around the watering holes and have a drink, some more than others. But now it's getting near the time where they have to fly back to their homelands. By this time, they're usually a few pounds heavier, but they're also laden with memories of wonderful adventures and great friendships. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm considered an enrichment speaker, but let me tell you, it is I who have been enriched with your presence. Thank you for sharing this journey with me.